Morning to everyone. Parshas Shelach, Parsha that speaks about the Meraglim, spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent to spy out the land of Canaan. And it's a very mysterious story because the Torah tells us Kulam Anoshim Menashe B'nei Yisrael Hema. That the Meraglim were great people. They were tzaddikim. They were leaders of the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu sent them on a mission and gave them specific instructions what their mission consists of. They should check out the land. They should check out the land that dwells upon the nation that dwells upon the land. Is it a strong nation? Is it a weak nation? This is a few inhabitants, many inhabitants. The cities, are they fortified cities? Are they not fortified cities? Are they mountains, valleys, everything that there is, check out over there. But I'm going to come back, and they bring back a report exactly as they were instructed. And they say, we went there, spent 40 days checking out the land, backwards and forwards, and we've done a risk assessment, an analysis, and we've come to a conclusion, based on the evidence that we have collected throughout the 40 days spent in the land, that we will not be able to do it. It's a mission impossible. It won't happen. We won't be able to conquer this land. Because they're stronger than us. Simple. Go to war, whichever army is stronger wins the war. And we did an analysis, we did an assessment, and we're assessed it. They're very well fortified, they're giants, they're mighty, they're incredibly powerful, and we don't stand the chance. And they use the words, stronger than mimenu. What does mimenu mean? Literal meaning of mimenu means than us. However, the Gemara says, al tikra mimenu, don't understand the word mimenu to mean from us, they're stronger than us, or rather mimenu, they're stronger than him with a capital A. They're stronger than Hashem. We won't be able to conquer the land, even with Hashem's help, because the Canaanim are so strong, they're stronger than the Creator. So the Gemara explains, what does it mean they're stronger than the Creator? How can they be stronger than the Creator? Creator is obviously the source of everybody's existence. It's really stronger than everybody. So it says, Ein balabayis yachol lahetzias kelav misham. It's like a mashal of a homeowner who built himself very heavy furniture. And it's so heavy that he himself can't extract it. He can't take it out. He built heavy furniture. Now that it's sitting there, it's unmovable. So the Canaanim are like heavy furniture that Hashem created. And they're sitting there in the land of Canaan. And even the Balabayis, even the Creator himself, won't be able to move them. So therefore, let's quit while we're ahead. Okay. The whole story is very puzzling. Why is the whole story very puzzling? Who are these people? These are people who were in Egypt. And they left Egypt with the most incredible, miraculous display of Hashem's power. 10 plagues, culminating with Makas B'chayros, which brought Paroi to his knees. Paroi, the mighty king of Mitzrayim, who ruled the entire civilized world in his time. It was the most influential country in the world that had an influence and a control over every single part of civilization. And not a single servant, not a single slave could ever escape from Mitzrayim. Not even one slave. And here, 600,000 slaves with their wives and children marched out of Mitzrayim b'yad Rama with an outstretched arm in the middle of the day. And Paroi was completely powerless to stop them. So they saw the most incredible miracles. They saw the most incredible display of Hashem's might. Then they crossed the Yam Suf. Was it naturally possible to cross the Yam Suf? They crossed the Yam Suf because there was an incredible miracle, and they themselves stood at the banks of the Yam Suf and they said, Zeh Keli V'Amvenu, this is my God, and I will beautify him. They themselves said, that all the inhabitants of Canaan will melt away in fear when they hear what happened by the Yam Suf. What were these people eating? They were eating manna from heaven, as we discussed last week at length. They were eating miraculous food. They were going through a desert that had snakes and scorpions that the Medrash describes as being the most scary and dangerous company to have with you. And nevertheless, not a Jew was injured because the clouds of glory went ahead of them, and they got rid of all the snakes and scorpions. And the Jewish people had a very smooth journey in the desert because of the incredible miracles that Hashem was showing them. What did they drink? They drank water from the well of Miriam, which miraculously rolled along with them in the desert. So they were bathing in miracles, the most incredible miracles. And suddenly they say, you know what? Hashem can't pull off this one. Everything else he can pull off, this he can't pull. Does that make any sense? I mean, if Hashem is going to perform miracles like the splitting of the Red Sea, like Makis and Mitzrayim, does it make a difference if you're dealing with Pharaoh or you're dealing with the 31 kings of Canaan? They themselves said, and all the inhabitants of Canaan melted away when they heard about the splitting of the Red Sea. They knew what was coming. And now suddenly they are saying that we've done an analysis and we've come to a conclusion. We won't be able to conquer them because they're stronger than Hashem. And if that's not puzzling enough, you have Kalev, who responds to it. Kalev disagrees with the 12 spies. 10 said it can't be done. Yeshua and Kalev remained loyal to Hashem and to Moshe. And they said it can be done. If this is what Hashem wants, then we will be able to do it. If Kalev wants to refute the claim of the Meraglim, he should have said, what are you talking about? Hashem split the Red Sea for us. Hashem gives us man every day. Hashem gives us the water from the well of Miriam. Hashem gives us the clouds of glory. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim with 10 plagues. How do you doubt his ability to be able to rescue us and save us with miracles? He doesn't say that. You don't find that in Kalev's argument at all. So obviously we're missing something. We're missing something both in understanding where the Meraglim are coming from, and also in understanding in Kalev's response to them. Obviously, everybody agreed that for some reason, the experience that they had with the incredible miracles that were displayed in Egypt is irrelevant to this discussion. And why would it be irrelevant? So we discussed last week at length about the Mon. And we spoke about how the Mon fell for 40 years, the 40 years that they were in the desert. What happened when they arrived in Eretz Yisrael? When they arrived in Eretz Yisrael, Sheish Shanim Tizrat Todecha, the Sheish Shanim Tizmer Karmecha. For 6 years you should sow your field, and 6 years you should prune your vineyard. The Chaltas Tvasa, and you eat the produce of your work. So in other words, the Jewish people already knew in the desert that all this miraculous phenomenon that they were experiencing was only going to last for as long as they were in the desert. But when they arrive in Eretz Yisrael, everything's going to change. And they're going to revert to a world of nature, a natural world. In fact, the very fact that Moshe Rabbeinu sent Meraglim, spies, to spy out the land, was clear and told them, I want you to come back with a report, the details of the people, of the land, of the fortifications. Now, if their plan was that there was going to be a miracle like Kriyas Yamsuf, or a miracle like the Mon, or a miracle like Torah, a miracle like the clouds of glory getting rid of all the snakes and scorpions, in the same way the clouds of glory are going to get rid of all the Canaanites, does it make a difference if they're strong or they're weak? Does it make a difference if they are fortified or not fortified? Does it make a difference if they have hills or valleys? Makes no difference. The clouds of glory will wipe them out. From the fact itself that they were sent on a mission by Moshe Rabbeinu and asked to bring back a detailed report of the natural state of events, was clear to them that the conquest of Eretz Canaan is not going to be a miraculous experience. It's going to be according to the rules of nature, and that's why in the desert already the Jewish people were set up as an army called Yotzei Tzava. Every man between 20 and 60 was conscripted to be part of an army which the Jewish people set up, and this army was going to conquer Eretz Yisrael. So the Meraglim understood that the miraculous phenomenon was a temporary story that was going to happen in the Midbar. And when they get to Eretz Yisrael, all that's going to stop, and everything has to be done according to the rules of nature. That's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants things to run according to the rules of nature. And that's why they were sent to spy out the land and to bring back a report in great detail how, from a natural perspective, is the best way to conquer the land. So they were very honest about it. They said, we went and we checked it out very carefully. And we looked at the situation and we've reached a conclusion. It cannot be done. According to the rules of nature, there's no way that our little army of 600,000 men is going to be able to take on the mighty, powerful giants and the fortifications and the sophistication of the war machine of Canaan. We don't stand a chance. We might as well quit while we're ahead. Hashem wants to make miracles for us. Hey, who can compete with Hashem's miracles? But if Hashem is telling us that this is going to be a conquest that's going to happen according to the rules of nature, and this is our task to go and spy out the land and come back with a report according to the rules of nature, the answer is it cannot be done. Quit while we're ahead. And that's why when Kalev responded, Kalev didn't say, but didn't he split the Red Sea? Kalev said, if this is what Hashem wants, he'll be able to pull it off. What was the mistake of the monogamy? It's very much connected with what we discussed last week about the month. Is Hashem limited as to display his power and his control over reality and over the world only through miracles? Or is he also in charge of nature? Simple question. Of course, Hashem can sustain me with manna from heaven. Hashem can provide for me with the well of Miriam. Hashem can protect me with clouds of glory. But what if he wants to sustain me through the natural process of the economic system that he set into the world? What if he wants to protect me, not with clouds of glory, but with a natural system? An army, have a police force. And that's the way he wants to protect me. So if I think that it's the army that's protecting me, if I think that it's my business that's providing me with Parnasa, that I can do an assessment, and I can say, you know what, this business is not likely to. This army is not strong enough to protect. But if I realize that it's Hashem that's providing for me, and it's Hashem that's protecting me, and it's Hashem that's doing for me, and the fact that he wants everything to go through the vessels, everything to go through nature, is because this is what Hashem instructed me. But Hashem is going to bless you with all that you will do. Hashem says to the Jewish people, I want you to enter into the land of Canaan and conquer the land and make the land of Canaan Eretz Yisrael. This is Hashem's will. If this is what Hashem wants, says Kalev, and he's not limited to functioning only through miracles. He is truly unlimited. And when you're truly unlimited, you're not limited to anything. You're not even limited to, in other words, there's the natural and there's the miraculous. The natural is a system, a finite system. That's the natural, right? When Hashem's omnipotence overrides the rules of nature, that's called a miracle. That's Hashem expressing his omnipotence, his infinite ability to have his way. And he overrides the rules of nature. The question is, can Hashem also function and have his will expressed in the rules of nature? Or is he only limited to the miraculous? In the language of Kabbalah, we have Memale Kol Almin, we learned about this time. Just like the neshama fills the body, every part of the body is filled by a different energy of the neshama in accordance with its capacity. Just like the neshama fills the body, so the Almighty fills the world. And just like the neshama fills the body, every single organ of the body, every single limb of the body gets an energy and a life force which is tailored to its capacity, to its nature, its form. So the Almighty fills the world, his energy and his life force fills every single creation in the world in accordance with its capacity. So you have Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, the life force of godliness that manifests itself in Atzilus is much more intense than the life force of godliness that manifests itself in Bria. And the life force that manifests itself in Bria is much more intense than the life force that manifests itself in Yitzir. And the life force that manifests itself in Yitzhira is much more intense than the life force that manifests itself in Nasiya. And that's just speaking in very general terms. But within each one of these worlds, there's myriads of individual different creations. And each creation gets a tailored life force and energy that fits its uniqueness, its capacity to the T. Because if there was a drop more energy, a drop more life force than that created being is capable of absorbing in its limited structure, it would be overwhelmed and it would be knocked out of, it would be over, it wouldn't function. It would lose its existence. So everything is tailor-made and measured exactly according to the capacity of every single person. That's mamalik palalmud. That's godliness functioning in a finite capacity, in a finite manner through the rules of nature. Right? Nature, the nature of every created being is different from the nature of another created being. In our world, we have the human, animal, vegetable, and mineral. The nature of a human is different from the nature of an animal. The nature of an animal is different from the nature of a vegetable. The nature of a vegetable is different from the nature of a mineral. Everything has its own nature, and within each level, there are myriads of levels. No two have the same nature, and therefore no two have the same divine life force, giving them that limited energy and limited life that they can contain within them. Right? Then you have the concept of Seviv Kalam. Seviv Kalam is the infinite energy, the infinite divine energy that encompasses the world. In other words, it's there and creates everything from nothing to something, but it's not in a manner where it's contracted and tailor-made to fit into the limitations of each creation. It's an infinite force, does what it has to, it's there, concealed to a certain extent from the creation because it was revealed, it would overwhelm, but at the end of the day, it does its thing. And when God decides to make a miracle, what he's basically doing is he's putting Seviv Kalam into the driver's seat, the Malik Kalam steps aside, Seviv Kalam comes through, the sea splits, the manna comes popping down from heaven, everything works according to God's will, it doesn't work according to the capacity of creation, it goes according to Hashem is running the world. Right? That's Seviv Kalam. The Malik Kalam, you could say, is limited to being finite. Right? If the Malik Kalam became infinite, it wouldn't be the Malik Kalam anymore. It would become Seviv Kalam. Seviv Kalam is limited to being unlimited. Right? If it wasn't unlimited, it wouldn't be Seviv. It would become a mountain. Miracles are a revelation of God's omnipotence in a manner which transcends nature, transcends the limitations of creation, and just plows through. Hashem's agenda just plows through without regarding the rules of nature. That's what a miracle is. That's Seviv Kalam. The essence of Hashem is unlimited or limited? It's unlimited, correct. However, it's not limited to being unlimited. It's not restricted to being unlimited. The essence of Hashem is absolutely infinite. And because it's absolutely infinite, it is whatever it wants to. It can manifest itself through infinitude, and it can manifest itself through finitude, equally. So if Hashem decides to express his will through a miracle, let it be. It becomes miracles. If Hashem decides that he wants his miracle to be manifest through nature, it'll go through nature. How can an infinite omnipotence manifest itself through a limited nature? If Hashem was limited, that would be a problem for him. But since he's truly unlimited, in the fullest sense of the word, in the sense he's not even limited to being unlimited. Put it like this, we once discussed, can Hashem make an elephant go through the eye of a needle? Of course he can, right? How can he do it? One of two ways. Either make the elephant shrink so it fits right through the eye of the needle, or make the eye of the needle expand so the elephant can walk right through. But can he make that the elephant should remain an elephant? The eye of the needle should remain an eye of a needle. The elephant should not shrink. The eye of the needle should not expand. And nevertheless, the elephant should go through the eye of the needle. The answer is, Hashem can do anything. The fact that I don't understand how that would work doesn't limit Hashem. So the miracle is the elephant. The eye of the needle is nature. Now, can Hashem make a miracle happen? Of course. He can do so by either having the elephant override the eye of the needle. Get out of the way, I'm going through. Or he can have the elephant be contracted into nature, right? So no longer miracles. Now we have nature going through the eye of the needle. But can he make the elephant go through the eye of the needle, and the eye of the needle should remain an eye of the needle? In other words, that Hashem's agenda should prevail in the rules of nature. So because he's truly omnipotent, he can do that. Not a problem. In fact, that is a greater manifestation of his omnipotence than if he just made a miracle. And that's why Kalev said, Oloi Nala. Oloi Nala, we ascend, we will ascend. A double ascent. Now, you're coming from the midbar, you're coming from the desert, a place where you saw God's miracles on a daily basis. And you're coming into an Eretz Neishes, coming into a settled land where you're going to have to plow and sow, and everything's going to go into the rules of nature. You're sure you're going up, maybe you're going down. So Kalev says, Oloi Nala. It's a double ascent, not just an ascent. Entering into a world of miracles is an ascent. Entering into a world where Hashem's agenda is going to prevail, even according to the rules of nature, that's a double ascent. That's true infinity. Where the infinity of Hashem is not even limited to being infinite. He can express it any way he wants. He wants to express it through nature. Nature belongs to him just like miracles belong. And that's what the Meraglim missed up. And this is what Kalev said, Olei Nala, we're going to go into such a high level of connection to Hashem, we're going to see the revelation of Hashem's presence, not the way it's limited to miracles, but even the way it's released from the limitation of miracles and it can function through nature. And we're going to do a natural war. We're going to have an army. We're going to attack naturally, and we're going to win. Because Hashem wants us to win. And he runs the world. And he runs not only the miraculous side of the world, he also runs the natural side of the world. And this is the reason why, how did they make the transition from the desert into Eretz Yisrael? And to cross the Jordan. So how did they cross the Jordan? So it says the Kohanim carried the Aron, and they went into the water of the Jordan. As soon as the feet of the Kohanim touched the water of the Jordan, the water split. And the Jewish people went straight across. And so that is interesting that the Kohanim with the Aron remained on that side. They just went in, their feet went into the water split, the entire Jewish people crossed. As soon as the last members of the Jewish people went out of the Jordan, the waters started flowing in. And the Kohanim were stuck on the other side with the Aron. How did they? So the Gemara says, Nasa Aron is Noisa. The Aron carried its carriers, and it crossed the Yarden like we used to have those over the before they had the Eurostar. What was it called? The hovercraft, right? So the Aron went across the Yarden like a hovercraft with the Kohanim who were carrying. It carried its carriers and it crossed. Yeah. So why the Aron? Why was this? I mean, Yam Suf was also split without an Aron. Why was the Aron? Why is a significant part in this transition from the Midbar into Eretz Yisrael? So if you remember, we talked about the Aron many times. One of the incredible miracles that took place with the Aron is that the Aron, even though it had a measurement, it had to measure 2.5 amos. But in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Aron didn't take up any space. Malkim ha'Aron me'enim and amida, right? From the wall of the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the Aron was 10 amos. From the other wall of the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the Aron was 10 amos. From one wall to the other was 20 amos. The Aron was 2.5. 10 and 10 and 2.5 equal 20. Even though it doesn't make sense mathematically, but that's what happened. The Aron didn't take up any space. So we know in general that there are things in this world that don't take up space. Ideas don't take up space. Angels don't take up space. Souls don't take up space. Concepts don't take up space. But there are things that don't take up space. There are also things that do take up space. A book takes up space. A cup takes up space. A table takes up space. A building takes up space. Okay? So we're accustomed to knowing there are certain things that take up space and things that don't take up space. What about the Aron? So on one hand, the Aron was one of those things that takes up space. It had to measure 2.5 amos. And at the same time, it didn't take up any space in the picture. So you can transcend the division between taking up space and not taking up space. And be both simultaneously. That's what happened when they crossed into Eretz Yisrael. They entered into that level of manifestation of godliness where it doesn't have to be expressed through miracles. It can be expressed through nature just the same. It transcends the divide between the infinite and the finite. And that's even a greater level of infinitude than that which is expressed through me. And therefore, after the Aring had to be involved in that transition that the Jewish people crossed from the Midbar into Eretz Yisrael. Double us. We can move over to Tanya. I believe we are still in the middle of the introduction to the second section. And that is on page Ayin Vav.
Um, 285, 286.
Thank you very much. 285, 286. And if I'm not mistaken, we're in the last column, the fifth line from the top, by the words, Ach hine yadu alayodu. So to summarize, you see there's 4 columns in the Hagdama. And if you have only that one page, it's 2 columns, right? So you have, and then and the final column, 5 lines from the top, 2 words from the end of the line. It starts, Ach hine. So just to summarize, we learned that the love of Hashem generally can be described as being divided into 2 categories, 2 major categories. The higher category is a spontaneous love, which is the automatic and natural expression of the neshama. Neshama is a part of Hashem, and therefore it is programmed with a passionate love for Hashem, a flame that rises spontaneously and wants to be fused with Hashem. One who is in touch with his neshama will feel this love. Who is in touch with their neshama? Someone who's really, really worked hard on themselves to refine the coarseness of the body and the nefesh habamis, learned an amazing amount of Torah, performed an amazing amount of mitzvahs, and brought in a tremendous amount of holiness into their life, stands a chance of becoming in touch with their neshama. Most of us don't fit into that category. Tzaddikim, simchu tzaddikim b'Hashem. Tzaddikim rejoice with Hashem. They get to experience this incredible love. It's coming directly from the neshama, spontaneously. What about the rest of us? So we have a chance of applying for the lower level of love. What's the lower level of love? Lower level of love is a love that there is a formula how to try and achieve it. There are certain things that we're taught to learn about, contemplate on, dwell on them, focus on them, until little by little it's going to seep through and we'll begin to have different priorities in life, until eventually there'll be something that can be described as a love for Hashem. And this is the mitzvah of Ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, that we should make an effort to love Hashem. You can't make yourself love something which you don't love. But Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Jew can contemplate on the greatness of Hashem, contemplate on the fact that Hashem is our strength. He provides us with our life. He provides us with our existence. He provides us with our successes. He provides us with everything we have and everything we want to have. Hashem Echad. Hashem is one and only. There's nothing else besides Him. And the more deeply we understand that, and the more we contemplate on that, the more we become in touch with that, and become connected with that reality, the more chance there is that you will come to love Hashem. And there's Alter Rebbe in the first section of Tanya also told us various methods of contemplating on the fact that Hashem loves us, contemplating on the fact that Hashem is our soul, He's our life, and it's natural for a person to love their life. Contemplating on the fact that Hashem is our Father, it's natural for a child to love his father. And all these things to contemplate on, to try and create a love. And that he explained is what Moshe Rabbeinu said, la'asoisa. That there's certain things that you can do to make the love happen. So besides the fact that there's a spontaneous love that a tzaddik marries, which is not something you can make through any formula, that's a gift from Hashem. That's me'ein elam haba, it's a taste of the world to come. But there's also the lower level of love, which is a love that has to be created through understanding and contemplating and going through the motions that are necessary to achieve somewhat of a love for Hashem. And we explain that the lower level of love is called like a chinuch level in comparison to the greater level of love. Just like you have a mitzvah the way it's performed by a child who's practicing to do the mitzvah. Then you have the mitzvah the way it's performed by an adult in the proper way. Similarly, you have in the love of Hashem, you have the chinuch level of love, which is the lower level of love, the love that has to be worked on through our efforts, through our contemplation. Then you have the ultimate love, which is the love of the tzaddik, simcha tzaddikim Hashem, the spontaneous expression of the neshama. That's the real thing. Then we quoted the pasuk, educate a child according to his level, according to his way. Even when he grows old, he won't steer away from that path. So we ask the question, if the idea is to educate the child on his path, in other words, you're compromising in the education of the child because that's a maximum that he can handle. So then why are you saying Gamki Yazkin or Yosser Rimena, that you're saying that even when he grows old, he's not going to steer away from it? No, that's what I want, the opposite. I want that when he grows old, he should go into a stronger level of Avodas Hashem. Not that he should stick with what with the watered down level that I gave him because he couldn't handle more. You want him to grow to the level where he will be able to handle more. So why is it good news that Gamki Yazkin or Yosser Rimena, that even as he grows older, he's not going to steer away from it? Don't you want him to steer away from the compromised level that you've educated him with? You want him to grow into a more real level. That was the question we had in the beginning. So now that we understand that we're talking here in the chinuch, we're talking about the chinuch in Avos Hashem. So we have the lower level of Avos Hashem and the higher level of Avos Hashem. And we're saying that it's necessary to educate everyone in the lower level of Avos Hashem. Even if you're dealing with someone who will one day become a tzaddik. And when he'll become a tzaddik, he'll no longer need this lower level of Avos Hashem because they already have a higher level. He'll have the level of spontaneous, the flame of love that is emanating from the soul spontaneously, which is a taste of the world to come. Like Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Hashem gave them in this world a taste of the world to come. So at that point, will it make any difference for them if you educated them with the less advanced level of love? It'll be completely insignificant, you would think. Says the pasuk, no, it's never going to be insignificant. Educate the child in his way. In other words, educate the person who's on the lower level in the way that is appropriate for the lower level. Teach them what to understand about the greatness of Hashem. Teach them what to contemplate on the greatness of Hashem, so that they can have the created level of love, the lasoisa level of love. Because even should they one day reach the higher level, they're still going to benefit from the lower level that they carry with them. Why? What do they need the lower level for? Once they're in the higher level, they're flying high. They don't need the lower level. So this is what we're going to learn today, how the Alter Rebbe is going to explain why there's always going to be a benefit for the lower level. It says, it's well known to those who know time of the meaning of the pasuk, that which is written, that a tzaddik falls 7 times and lifts himself up, and rises. What does that mean? That means that a tzaddik has, even though he's a tzaddik, he has a sense within the level of tzaddik itself. Just because he's reached the level of Elam Haba in this world, doesn't mean he's ready to retire. He still has heights to climb in the Madrega of tzaddik. Heights above heights above heights. It's always to go further and further. Hashem is infinite. So as much as a tzaddik reaches a high Madrega, he still has to go higher. And being that we're talking about going higher, we're not just talking about going relatively high. We're talking about going incomparably high. Now, there is a rule that when you go incomparably higher, there's a certain process which we call a fall in between one level and another. And let me just explain it with a very, very simple mashal. If you're driving a manual car and you're going 30 miles an hour, You want to go 32 miles an hour, 33 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, just press the accelerator a little bit. Go a little faster. But if you want to go into a different mode, not just a little bit, not just a few miles more, you want to go in a different mode, then you have to go into another gear. And the way to go into another gear, the first thing you need to do when you go into another gear is you have to disengage. You have to press down on the clutch. Get out of the gear. And only then can you go into a new gear. Where are you in between third gear and fourth gear? You're nowhere. You're not in any gear. You're coasting. Right? So what keeps you going when you're coasting? So you could say it's the continuous energy that's coming from when you were in the previous gear. Or maybe you need to also think about what other resources you have to keep you going in between one gear and the next. Now, I said before that it depends if it's a comparable ascent or an incomparable ascent. And we have this on many levels. Gemara says that Nebzeda, who lived in Bavel and studied Talmud Bavli, studied Babylonian Talmud, the system of study that there was in Babylon, he emigrated to Eretz Yisrael. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to study the Talmud on the level that it studied in Eretz Yisrael, Talmud Yerushalmi. So what did he do? He fasted 40 days or 100 days, it's two versions of the Gemara, to forget everything he learned in Bavel, be able to appreciate the Talmudic approach in Eretz Yisrael. Now, let's assume that the learning in Eretz Yisrael was on a much higher level than the learning was in Bavel. Yeah? So if you come in, let's say you're studying in a sixth form course, and you want to switch to an A-level course, all right, you want to switch to the next level. Yeah, you're studying studying one level, and you want to go to a higher level. So what would you recommend to the student that's on the lower level who wants to go to the higher level? Forget everything you learned on the lower level? No. Revise everything you learned on the lower level, then you'll be in the best position to be able to understand the lessons at the higher level. Right? The reason for that is because the lower level and the higher level are only relatively distant from each other. It's basically the same thing. It's not a more advanced level. But if you're entering into a whole different way of thinking, a whole different way of understanding, a whole different way of approaching things, then as long as you're stuck to the old approach, you're going to have a hard time switching over to a totally different approach. So being that the advantage of Talmud Yerushalmi over Talmud Bavli was not just a relative difference. It would have been a relative difference. Rav Zeta would have done well to review the entire Talmud Bavli to be able to study Talmud Yerushalmi. But because he was going into a completely different approach, so he felt that he needs to fast and clear his system from his whole mode of thinking that he had when he learned Talmud Bavli, be able to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. That is an intellectual level. A similar concept exists on an emotional level. A person has a certain level of Ahavas Hashem, and he wants to move ahead to another level of Ahavas Hashem, a higher level of Ahavas Hashem, incomparably greater level of Ahavas Hashem. So will the previous level of Ahavas Hashem be a good preparation for him to reach the new level? Or will the previous level be a distraction to the new level? So it really depends whether it's comparable or incomparable. If the ascent is a comparable ascent, then the more you are in touch with the previous level, the better you'll be absorbent of the new level. But if the ascent is an incomparable ascent, then you have to disengage from the previous level in order to have the new level. So being that when we speak about the tzaddik having aliyahs, having ascents, one after the other, higher and higher and higher, and we're talking about ascents that are incomparable. So the tzaddik's aliyah is incomparable to where he was before. So the tzaddik needs to disengage from his previous level of Ahavas Hashem in order to absorb the new level of Ahavas Hashem. That's why the pasuk says, Sheva Yipol tzaddik become a tzaddik falls 7 times and rises. The fall is the disengaging of the level of Ahavas Hashem that he has in order to become qualified to him or to enter the next level of life. Especially since man is called a moving vehicle, moving object, not a stationary object. Malachim are called oimdim. Malachim, every malach was created with a certain character, a certain level, and he's stuck there. Doesn't have the ability to advance. But a human being is called a mahalim. His task in life is to continuously move forward, grow. Man has to go from level to level, but not always retain the same level. Between one level and the other, before he reaches the higher level, he's in a state of what we call a fall from the first level. So in between one ascent and the other, there is something similar to a fall. However, the pasuk says that even when he falls, he doesn't fall all the way down. It's only considered a fall in comparison to his earlier level. And not in comparison to other people, to average people, chas v'shalom. Even when the tzaddik's in the state of the fall, he's still on a higher madrega than other people are in their avodah. Why? What keeps him, if he doesn't have this special level of Abbas Hashem that makes him a tzaddik, so what keeps him? So he says, because he still has a trace left from his original level. So like I said before, what keeps you going when you pull out of third gear and you haven't yet gone into fourth gear? You're still going on the push of what you were going till now. So the tzaddik is still coasting with the influence that he has from his previous one. However, the most important component of what keeps him safe when he's in this fall is the love that he was educated in and got accustomed to in his youth. Before he reached the level of tzaddik. So there is the training that the tzaddik got before he became a tzaddik. And that was he should contemplate on what needs to be contemplated on in order to get the regular love of Hashem that is available for every person. This is the meaning of the pasuk that even as he grows old, he still won't turn away from it. Even as he grows old, grows old, meaning he'll become a tzaddik. He still will benefit from having that training that he got in his very initial stages, because that training that brought him to the basic level of Abbas Hashem will be there for him, even in the moments of fall that he has as he's ascending from one level of tzaddik to the other. He's going to need a cushion to keep him safe when he's in the no man's land, when he's disengaged from one level of Abba, before he engages in the next level, he needs something to keep him. So that chinuch Abba that he got in the early stages, when he was contemplating on what we need to contemplate on in order to create a love for Hashem, will stand him in good stead all the way through. And therefore, everything we're going to learn about in Shara Yichud V'Emunah, which is the greatness of Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, is going to be beneficial not only for beginners that are at the lower level, where they have to understand the greatness of Hashem and contemplate on the greatness of Hashem in order to be inspired to love and fear Hashem, but even for those people that are in the high madrega of tzaddik, and they would say they're in touch with their neshama, and their neshama has a spontaneously exciting love for Hashem coming as a flame that comes out automatically. So what difference does it make if I do or don't contemplate on the greatness of Hashem at the level that it's going to bring me to square one? I'm not dealing with square one. I'm already on square 99. So the answer is that even a tzaddik has, in the process of aliyah, he has moments when he needs to be able to fall back on this basic aga, which is always a good thing to have. And therefore, the benefit of what we're going to learn in these chapters is not only for the Beinoni, it's also a benefit for the tzaddik. The first things that arouse love of Hashem and fear of Hashem, and the foundation of those things that arouse love of Hashem and fear of Hashem, is the pure and loyal faith in the oneness of Hashem. May He be blessed and exalted. And therefore, it's very, very important that we get clarity in what it means when we speak about the oneness of Hashem. Especially since the Baal Shem Tov introduced a whole new dimension, or revealed a whole new dimension in this concept of understanding what it means when we say Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. And when we say Ein Oid Milvado, is nothing else except Hashem, what it actually means. So that will take us to a whole new level of relationship with Hashem. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe finds it very, very basic and fundamental to discuss the matters that are going to be discussed in this Shar HaYichud B'Amun.
They still have
Question was asked: What would the Yidden do before the Baal Shem Tov? They still had Amunah. True. It seems that as we get closer to Mashiach, it's required of us to have Amunah in a more intense level. It's similar to what before the Torah was given. So there were karbanos. There were sacrifices that were offered before the Torah was given. Noach brought karbanos, Adam and Rishon brought karbanos, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov brought karbanos. And one of the laws in karbanos was that you had to bring the animal or the bird or whatever it was that was brought as a carbon had to be intact. If it was missing a limb, it was disqualified from being brought as a carbon. Then when the Torah was given, the Mishkan was built, and the Mizbeach in the Mishkan, and later the Mizbeach in Beis HaMikdash. So this law that the animal or the bird or the offering is brought in the Beis HaMikdash has to be intact was slightly changed. Not only has to be intact in the sense that it has to have all its limbs, but even if it has all its limbs, one of the limbs is injured, damaged in certain ways, it's called a balmum, and it can't be brought as a carbon. Yeah? So there is a whole discussion. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean that there's two different laws? There's one law that a carbon has to be intact. Another law is that a carbon can't have a mum. It has to be tamim, it has to be complete. Yeah. And this law applied before Matan Torah, this law didn't apply before Matan Torah. Or is it the same law? The carbon has to be tamim. Question is only, what is the definition of tamim? So before Matan Torah, the definition of tamim was that if it's not missing a limb, then it's tamim. But if it has a scratch or it has a deformity, it's not a problem. It doesn't stop it from being tamim. And after Matan Torah, the definition of tamim was upgraded. So it's not a different mitzvah. The same mitzvah that got a new definition. And therefore, now after Matan Torah, if somebody's going to bring an animal that has a deformity, even though before Matan Torah that was considered tamim, now it's not considered tamim anymore. Follow what I'm saying? With this, the Rebbe explains a puzzling matter in the Rambam. And I'll come back in a minute to explain how it answers your question. The Rambam says that a heretic gives a whole list of things which makes a person be considered potatoes, amin. Yeah. One of the things he says is if somebody says there is a God, if God, He created the world, He runs the world, but He has physical form, that's considered not potatoes. Hashem doesn't have any physical form. And if somebody thinks that Hashem has physical form, that's considered heretical. Yeah. So the Rabbi, who challenges the Rambam whenever there's something controversial in the Rambam, he attacks the Rambam and he says, how could you say such a thing? There were many great people who were greater than you, who mistakenly understood from the psukim that speak about the eyes of Hashem and the word of Hashem and the hand of Hashem, They understood that there were certain physical attributes, certain physical aspects. So even if you want to say that they were misguided, but don't call them heretics. They were finer people than you. Yeah. So the question is, what can we say in defense of the Rambam? So the Rabbi suggests the following. The Rambam isn't saying that the great people of previous generations that were mistaken to think that Hashem has certain physical aspects are heretics. Okay. At those times, there was nobody that explained it properly. But now that I've written the Hilchos Yisodei Torah, where I explain properly what it says in the Torah, the eyes of Hashem, the hands of Hashem, and I explained what it means, that it's not to be taken in the physical way at all. So once this is available to you, and you still actually say that Hashem has physical attributes, then you're talking missing the point. In other words, the level of emunah in Hashem, which is required after the Rambam revealed his teachings, is a higher level of emunah than was required before. And if somebody doesn't have that emunah, so before, it was a valid excuse. He could be considered to be a legitimate believing Jew. And it's something that he still needs to learn. But once that's become revealed, then it's missing something very, very fundamental. On a certain level, the same thing can be said about the revelation of Chassidus through the Baal Shem. Before the Baal Shem Tov revealed Chassidus, before the Baal Shem Tov revealed that when it says Ein Oid, it means there's truly nothing else. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad means Hashem is one and only, and there's nothing else besides Him. If somebody understood that yes, Hashem created the world, He runs the world, and there's also other things. It could be a legitimate level of understanding the situation. But once Chassidus came along, once the Alter Rebbe wrote Sha'ar Eichad and explains very clearly what Ein Oid means, what it means is nothing else. What it means, Hashem is absolutely one, there's nothing else. So then that's the required emunah of every year. So as we're getting closer to Mashiach, there's greater dimensions of the secrets of the Torah that have become accessible and become revealed. And this is now the level of emunah that is required of every year. Does that address your question a little? Okay. Are there any other questions? Let's go over to page 152. And it starts off with two small lines at the top of the page. I'm talking about the next page. I'm saying 152, the number's on top of the page. Yeah? So, Lahavin Ma'at Miza'eh. We want to understand at least a little bit, tiny little bit. Mashakasav Zohar, that which it says in the Zohar, Shema Yisrael Chulu Yechudei Ilah. Zohar says that the pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is the higher unity. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va'ed Hu Yechud Tato. And Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va'ed, which we say after Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is the lower unity. What does it mean, the higher unity and the lower unity? So simply speaking, the higher unity means there's only Hashem and nothing else. We close our eyes and we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem is one and only, there's nothing else. What about the whole world? My eyes are closed right now. I'm not dealing with it. I'm dealing with the reality is only Hashem and nothing else. I open up my eyes and I see, 1 minute. How do I deal with what I see with my eyes? That there's so many other things. So we say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va'ed. The word Va'ed is the same letters as the word Echad, with slight changes. What are the changes? The rule in Lashon Kodesh is that letters that fit into one group are interchangeable with each other. The letters Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yud, Ahavi, Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yud, fit into a certain category, a certain rule. The rule is, we know we have Beis, Kaf, Hey, Taf. that can be written with a dot or without a dot. Be a beis or a vase, a kaf or a chaf, a pei or a fei, a kaf or a saf. How do you know which one it should be? So generally speaking, the beginning of a word would normally be with a dot. In the middle of a syllable will be without a dot. So after the letters aleph, hey, vav, and yud, it's usually without a dot. After a consonant, it's with a dot. In other words, a consonant ends the syllable. So the new syllable would be would be a beis, a kaf, a pei, or a kaf. If you have an aleph, a hey, or vav, or yud, it usually continues the syllable. It's not a closing off of the syllable. It's a flowing syllable. So then the next letter would be with a kaf, it would be a chaf, it's a pei, it would be a fei, it's a kaf, it would be a saf. So the letters aleph, hey, vav, and yud fit into one group. And therefore they're interchangeable. So the aleph of echad is interchangeable for the vav of vav. The ches of echad is exchanged for the ayin of vav. Because the four letters aleph, ches, hey, and ayin are the four guttural letters that come from the same articulate tool, the throat. And any letter that comes from the same articulate tool is exchangeable, as Rashi explains in Chumash. So the aleph of echad becomes the vav of vav, the ches of echad becomes the ayin of vav, and the jumbo dalid of echad becomes the small dalid of vav. Which means the same concept that is in the word echad is downgraded to the word vav. So vav also means one, but it's a lower level of oneness than you have in echad. Echad is a very strong one. There's absolutely nothing else. And vav takes it down one level. Perhaps there is other things, but those other things are completely subservient to the oneness of Hashem. Different perspective. And we're going to learn in these chapters about these two perspectives, how they're both correct from different levels, different angles. And how even from the perspective of Va'ed, is also only Hashem and nothing else. And that we'll get to Yis Hashem as we move on. Above and you are not guttural.